Well, welcome back to the. I'm hoping this will be the final in this this series of reviving these 1960 lizard skins. For those of you who have not watched the previous videos, perhaps do have a look. There's a lot more to it, to sort of moisturising and reviving exotic skin than you would initially think. It's not just a case of just grabbing some cream or polish and rubbing it in. You do have to be extremely careful, and I go through this in extreme detail in the series of previous films. I don't want to go over the same details here, but these have been, it's certainly between 3 and 4 weeks that I've applied moisturiser to these skins daily. And it's just kept drawing, and I kept thinking, no, it'll be fine tomorrow. And you apply a little bit more cream, and it sinks in rather quickly. When you get the idea, because on an exotic, as I explained in the previous films, you really need a stiff, clean brush, and you need to sort of agitate the moisturising cream in. It doesn't absorb very well through the scales. Obviously, it's a very scaly surface on an exotic. This is lizard. Most lizards are a similar texture. Snake, crocodile skin, those type of things, it doesn't absorb terribly well through the actual scale. Most of the absorption takes place around the scale, in the softer, fleshy bits, more flexible flesh around the skin, around the scale, I beg your pardon. You have to kind of poke it and stir it, and it's like a capillary effect. Once those extremely dry bits between the scale start to absorb, it's like a capillary effect, and it will draw. And the idea is to get the moisturiser underneath the scale into the flesh behind the top presentation skin. That's the key. The first time you rub a bit of moisturiser into a very, very dry exotic, as these were, you rub it in, brush it up, you take your little cloth, give it a bit of a shine, you think, wow, that's amazing. It looks ready to go on the surface. The problem is probably 95% of the skin behind the scales is in a pretty grim condition, and it's close to disintegrating. That's the problem. So it takes a lot of time to force the creams behind, but I'm absolutely sure that I've got to that stage now. And once again, I'm covered in dirt and dust. It's been a strange time. I'll cover my already dusty trousers over purely out of habit, I think. I'm a hairstylist, and under this COVID-19, my salon's closed, and I'm completely refitting the place. But in truth, I didn't think it'd be closed for 3 months. I thought maybe 3 weeks, and I put on my dirty clothes and my scruffs, and I started painting and decorating, repairing, and then we're introduced to another 3 weeks of lockdown, and another 3 weeks. So I'm just continuing, and this is actually really quite a large building, and I'm just continuing doing everything I possibly can whilst we're closed. I haven't really been in the mood. Excuse me. I haven't really been in the mood for fiddling and faffing with shoes. And I've done this pair, but with a bit of a heavy heart, if I'm truthful with you. You know, the business is what's more important at the moment, and so that's what I spent most of my time. And it's why I've been constantly dressed in this old. It's actually quite a nice old jacket from 1970, but it doesn't fit me. It's rather big, and it's not of a good enough quality to spend the money and the time having it altered. I'm wearing these old sort of clapped out with stitched up here. They're old John Smedleys, and it's a shame. But I'm just wearing scruffs, and it seems like I've been wearing the same clothes for weeks, but I do have quite a lot of a similar colour that I wear for repairing cars and fixing buildings. But forget about that. That's not what this is about. I really want to show you that these are ready for presentation, they're ready for wearing, and I'm convinced they're finely moisturised. See, when you've got the moisturiser on, you let it sink in. Then you take the brush and you give it a brush, you give it a rub, you just buff it. You're not polishing it, you're trying to buff. And if there's nothing left on the surface because it's absorbed, it shines up, it brushes away very quickly. When they become fully saturated and they're not drawings anymore, the last application is sort of sitting on the skin. It's a bit cloggy, and that's where we are now. It's not really absorbed much of the cream I applied yesterday, so I'm going to sort of buff away what I can into the welting. It's all over the soles, it's inside, it's everywhere, and I just need to rub it, and it gets on the brush. So I'll rub the brush on the towel. Try and get the excess cream off onto the towel, and I'm just going to make the best the best presentation I can with this brush. When I've rubbed off some of the excess with the brush, then I'll go to a soft cloth and I'll rub away with a soft cloth. But, there's not actually that much more to see. If you saw the previous perhaps 3 videos, the shoes already looked like this on the surface, but behind they were still very, very dry. And had I worn them, they would have almost certainly torn and ripped here. They would have probably ripped around the ankles. They would have lost these skins. There were areas, which if you watch the first couple of videos around about here, where the scales were starting to lift, and on the other shoe it had actually split. I threaded a little patch, a very fine patch behind through the hole. It was a bit of a fiddle getting it through the hole, lying it flat, then feeding a little bit of glue through, making it. That's on the other shoe. That will never be perfect. It's a good repair, but it's never going to be perfect. But you know, you have to really look close. But on a shoe that's got quite a busy surface like this, you get away with it. But that's what happens. You get tears when the skin starts to dehydrate. So give these a very quick rub to try to get off any excess, which I know's on the surface now, because it's simply stopped absorbing. We didn't get to this stage for a good couple of weeks. I thought it might take a week or 2, but it actually took 3 or 4 weeks. And same with the soles. They absorb rather more readily because it's a regular skin. It's very, very, very thick. But there's no crusty, you know, there's no sort of scales on the surface. We did have like there was nothing on the surface other than like a glaze from the pavements. It would be obviously things like diesel and oil from the pavement. And I use solvents, and I use a very, very fine bit of wet and dry just to scrub that away and allow a good surface for the moisturising creams to be drawn into. And this is drawn in very well. And it's only skin, and it will dry out. And if you wear it, when you wear them, they flex and it cracks here. Moreover, when the skin is very dry, it cuts through where it makes contact with pavement very, very quickly. And so will the heels. But this is actually very supple now, and it'll be a normal wear pattern. They won't wear out easily and quickly. Your brittle, dry skin rubs away very quickly, very much like if you're using the pumice stone on neglected feet. If you've got dry heels and you rub it with a pumice stone, the pumice stone cuts through the dry very, very quickly. Then it comes through to the new skin underneath, and it simply stops cutting. And it's very much like that. And if you were to use a pumice stone on feet that are fresh and soft without any dry skin, you rub the pumice stone, nothing really happens. It's very much the same when you're using your shoes on the pavement. So it's easy to forget that this is only leather on the bottom here, and it does need a cream. I'm not going to polish them because that will make it greasy and slippy. But you can see it's got a lovely sort of sheen to it, a lovely gloss. And I'll spend a bit of time. I'll take the cloth and just rub it a bit more. I'm not trying to get a gloss finish on my soles, but I want to make them presentable. But I do want to rub away any surface of the cream because that'll make it a little bit slippy on the pavement. The first time I wear these, until it starts to scratch slightly there on the pavement in the heels, they'll be a little bit slippy for 4 or 5 minutes. I'll need to be careful if I'm walking down some steps or something. They'll be a bit lethal for a few minutes. But once you start to get a little bit of pavement grit, they're fine. But all of this doesn't really touch the pavement, and it's well protected. It's nice and flexible. So let's just take a very soft cloth, and I'll probably spend a good half an hour, possibly even an hour, doing nothing more than I'm doing here, buffing these shoes in circular motions. We'll just keep buffing them and buffing them. And any sort of surface residue that hasn't been absorbed will come away on the cloth. And they do need doing inside as well, because I moisturise the internal linings with a cream coloured match. I beg your pardon, said that clumsily. A cream with a colour to match the lining. The lining was very faded, and I wanted to revive it. So let's go to a different bit of my cloth without any residue of black. I don't want to spread any unnecessary. And I'll just give that a quick buff. Just make sure there's no residue that will rub onto my socks. Because I moisturise these linings when they're extremely dry with a coloured moisturiser. It really absorbs very, very deeply into the skin, and it doesn't really leave any residue once you've given it a rub like this. It's not going to send my socks brown. If I'd have done it on a newer skin that was fresher, less able to absorb, But yeah, there'll be a slightly different situation. I would have almost definitely used a neutral cream, but I discussed this in previous videos, why I use a coloured cream inside and the risk of colouring my socks, etc. So I've just given that a very quick rub. Let's just try and catch it in the light. And you can see it's got a lovely sort of glossy sheen about it. They were clean with alcohol, really cleaned inside, to sanitize them, but it made them a bit drier. But as you can see, the skin's revived beautifully. And I'll tell you what, I'm really happy with these. They really are nice. So, but I'll spend a good sort of half an hour, perhaps an hour, of just rubbing until no more sort of residue comes away. And I will not be finishing these with a polish. Never finish your exotic skins with polish. I've even treated all the edges here. I've rubbed it away with emery paper, actually, different grades, sharp, medium, and very fine. And I've moisturised the edges of the sole. It's got a lovely sort of, you can see the wood showing through. And I could use a black polish and make that deeper, but I probably won't bother. Some people favour sole edgings. It's like it looks a little. It's very. It sits on the surface. It doesn't sink in. This I've done with moisturiser. All this edge I've done with coloured moisturiser, and it's drawn in, so the colour's gone deep into the skin. There is the option of using sole edging. It's specifically for edging. It's like a dressing. You generally paint it on with a brush, but it's a little bit like fingernail polish. It's very shiny, very glitzy, and it chips and it scrapes and it cracks, and then it looks a bit of a mess. As do fingernails. If they've been polished, then it's cracked. It looks a bit of a mess, and it's just a little on the glitzy for my side, my personal taste. I don't really favour it. I prefer the natural finish of just moisturised edges, coloured moisturiser. And I would probably take a polish and just a tiny bit, just rub a little bit of polish on. If you put it on too thick, it will only crack. And I don't tend to use the ultra high shine, the mirror gloss type polishes, because they're very hard and they do have a tendency to crack. So I just use regular black polish, but I don't know, I probably won't do it if I'm honest. And I could, put a little bit of polish on the bottom here to protect them from any water, but they're not going to get worn in the rain. So I'm not going to bother. I've got another cloth in my pocket. It's even softer and cleaner. So let's just give them. It's very repetitive, very tedious watching somebody rub a pair of shoes with an old rag. And these rags are very soft. It's old bed sheet, and I guard them very jealously. It's very soft, almost rotten. It's all full of holes. But they're so soft, and that's stainings from old cleaners. But I put them through the boil wash. But when I put them in the boil wash, I do not use fabric softener afterwards. That leaves like a greasy surface to the cloth, and you'll rub that into your shoe. So I just keep going, but they really are sort of coming up good. And I've got a brand new pair of laces, which realistically are probably too long, but I just want to see what they look like with a pair of laces in them. What have we got? 3 holes here. I'm just going to quickly thread them up and see how they present with a lace. And they're flat laces. I always use flat laces. They're a bit of a fiddle to you have to lay them flat as you thread them through. They're a bit more of a fiddle than round laces, but it's a personal preference. I just adore flat laces. I've never been a fan of round. It's just a personal choice, and they're a bit more of a fiddle as you wear them. They do tend to sort of roll around and come on, lie flat. That's it. I'm not making a very good job of this because I can't actually see what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep my head away from the camera. I would normally put my head over this and do it. I'm almost threading this blind, so I'm making a bit of a hash of it. So do not take this as a way to thread a pair of shoes. But I really want to see it with a lace in there, and I'm looking forward to wearing them. Actually, I've tried this shoe on very briefly just before I turned on the camera, in fact, and that lace is twisted there. That's the thing about flat laces. They are a fiddle, but I'm prepared to put up with that. I just love the way they look. Anyway, that'll do. Let's just do a quick tie. As I say I tried these shoes on for the very first time just before I turned on this camera to see if they actually go on my foot. I kept them on for about 20 seconds. I didn't put the laces in or even try to walk in them or anything, but it was a very good fit, surprisingly good fit. I might, once I try to walk in them, I might put a slightly thicker insole in them, but they've came up really beautifully, fully moisturised, and they're gorgeous. I'm thrilled with them. I do hope you've enjoyed the series. Thanks for watching.